All right, let's talk the Illinois side of this Illinois-Wisconsin matchup. It's Joey Wagner, fresh off a 12-mile walk in Washington, D.C. How are you doing, Joey?
Terrible. That walk was a lot. I'm still not recovered. I think my foot's broken. I can feel it creaking now. I'm not built for this, Jeremy Werner.
You will never tour Washington, D.C. with me again, huh?
Every time we passed a bike or a scooter, I thought, man, let's hop on that thing. That'd take us where we need to go. And we did not. It was a really great tour. It was a good trip. Thanks to the guys who showed us around there. And it was an enjoyable trip, man. It was fun.
Yeah, being inside the Capitol, man, that was pretty cool. The rotunda was awesome. We get to be on the speaker floor, not while all the action was happening, sadly, but we did get to see it. That was really cool. So shout out to all those guys that gave us the tour. Huge Illini fans. So shout out to those guys. That was awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
All right. Well, we got a big Illinois-Wisconsin game this weekend. Is the more important thing it happened near Washington, D.C. was Illinois got its first Big Ten win at Maryland, Joey, and we'll see if they can sustain that. That is sustaining is kind of the word around this season, and obviously they have not done that yet following up last year, but now they open up a path. But I feel like, as I wrote in the preview and picks, this Wisconsin game is huge just to show that, hey, that Maryland wasn't a one-off, that it wasn't an outlier. So we have our six-pack of questions here, Joey, but now I think it's up to Illinois. I always talk about, hey, prove it that you are the team you expect to be. I think this week, just big picture, is about proving that last week was not an outlier.
Yeah, they've got to string it together. I thought they did some things that weren't particularly difficult to replicate. They've shown it to be difficult to replicate, but we've seen this team in the past under Brett Bielema do some of the things that contributed to winning and things that we think are just staples of what this program wants to be. But they've got to put it together because right now Maryland's the outlier game. And I wrote it in our preview and picks 2 weeks ago. This is an easy loss to Illinois or to Wisconsin, and they go into the bye week and you think, oh boy, what is going to make of these next four games? And they go and they win at Maryland, and Tanner Mordecai's hurt and he's out. And suddenly this becomes a really difficult game to pick. And I'm excited to talk about it because I don't know. I mean, it is a very tough game.
Yeah, because if you would have told me before the season, Joey, they go in the off week 4-4 with back-to-back wins over Maryland and Wisconsin, like I would have said, wait, what happened in those first 6 games? But you'd sit there and go, okay, 4-4, that's not ridiculous of where I would have thought they would be, but you'd have something to sell in the recruiting trail. Like if you go in 3-5, or if they would have gone in 2-6, you're thinking, where's this program going? If you go 4-4, okay, you're right in the ship and you got a chance to go to a bowl game, but also you just have something to sell on the recruiting trail, whether it's to JUCOs or whether it's to flip guys. And we'll dive into all that next week, but you just feel a lot differently off a back-to-back win. So let's get into our six-pack of questions here. Number one, I'm starting on the defensive side of the ball. And my question is, Joey, is this Illinois defense good now?
Yeah. I mean, they're not 22 good, and they're probably not very yeah, they're not. Okay, oh boy, it's basketball season, Jeremy Werner. You're in full mode. But yeah, they're a good defense, and I think we've seen signs of the defense being good for the better part of about a month. The offense, the special teams, some coaching decisions haven't, in terms of field position, haven't really set them up to have that bear out totally in the stat sheet. Some of the yardage has, but the points certainly haven't. They're not getting the turnovers, but I think you're starting to see Aaron Henry come into his own as a play caller. And by that, I mean, he's just getting comfortable with his personnel. And you're starting to see a little bit of that come through and shine through. And your guys are playing better. First and second down, I asked Aaron Henry about this. And, those are huge because it sets the last 2 weeks it has set Nebraska and it's set Maryland up into long third downs or longer third downs than we had seen. And Illinois is getting off the field. I think is it good? I think, but it's definitely improving over the course of the last 5 games.
Yeah, so I got some stats for you, Joey. I did a little bit of research.
Someone had to prepare for this. I'm glad it was you.
I scribbled down some notes. Last 5 games, Illinois is allowing 3.7 yards per carry per rush. Okay, that's about, if you did that over an entire season, that'd be 52nd nationally. That's solid. That's pretty good. The passing defense over the last 5 games, 6.44 yards per attempt. Over an entire season, that would be ranked 27th right now. So I think this is an above average to good defense the last 5 games since Kansas, because Kansas obviously was a disaster. Last 4 games, 6 takeaways. I'll take 1.5 takeaways per game. That'll probably be a good thing. 4 of the last 5 games, 5.2 yards per play or less. Purdue was the outlier there where he averaged about 6.2. 3 of the last 4 games, your third down conversion rate, 35.3% or lower. All of those games, besides Purdue, you're doing pretty well. Purdue, 8 of 13 was a huge issue for this team. Last 2 games, very small sample size, but just talking about how this is changing. You've allowed just 2 first downs on penalties. So things are turning in the right direction. I think this
and none of those came on third down, I might add, which was something that bit this team really badly in the first 6 games.
So that is improvement, and I think this is a solid to good defense. I think this is a bowl-worthy defense right now. Doesn't mean it's great, doesn't mean it can carry you, but I think this defense since Kansas, I mean, think of that Penn State game. They were good enough to win against Penn State. Purdue, second half, they certainly were not. First half, I thought they were good enough, but they've been put in bad situations. But I agree with you. I think Aaron Henry is starting to know what his defense is capable of and is playing to their strengths, and they are giving Illinois a chance to win games, which is what you want. That is what you want, is they are giving themselves a chance to win games the last 5 games for the most part. So I do think this defense is above average to good. I think they're good enough to make a bowl game. This defense the last 5 games is about what I expected them to be preseason, maybe with the exception of the pass rush getting home and getting sacks. Of course, Maryland was a step in that right direction too.
Yeah, that's the missing element right now still, right? Is getting back and getting that quarterback down to the ground. You saw Seth Coleman had a breakout game. We will get to that momentarily, Jeremy. I think it's the next question. But I think, and I've said this on here, I thought, especially against Toledo, and then a little bit, Aaron Henry overthought it with the quarterbacks at times in terms of just not wanting them to beat you on the ground. But I think you've seen him. I know you've seen him dial up more pressures in the last couple of weeks. And I think that coincides with seeing James Kreutz, Kenenna Odeluga, Dylan Rosiak. Those guys have been pretty good in pressure. And you're starting to see some of those outside backers get back there. You want to see them bring them down. That's what we thought the next step for this outside linebacker group was to bring those guys down. But I just feel like he's starting to know, like, okay, you know, the back end maybe is earning some trust, and he's able to let some of those guys up front loose a little bit more. You want to see that carry over, especially against a redshirt freshman quarterback making his first road start. Hello, Drew Aller. We talked about that a lot going into Penn State. But he's settling into it, I think. And those guys are settling. It's a new voice, right? Like it's Aaron Henry's voice in the building isn't new, but his voice in this role was new. I think everybody just had to get on the same footing. It's still not a completed picture. Like I don't want to paint that as to be the case, but I think just everyone is kind of starting to settle down a little bit. The offense is putting them in better positions, and you're seeing, and especially in the last 2 games, you're seeing that play out.
Yeah, and you're seeing, as you said, personnel get better with more experience. The linebackers are obviously a huge part of that. Dylan Rosiak, as I wrote about, the last 3 games has been phenomenal. Kenenna Odeluga has been really good. But even Purdue, they were kind of up and down. First half great, second half not so great. But the last 2 games, they have been really, really good. So that's been a huge key for them as well.
Has Dylan Rosiak been the second best defensive player over the last month?
Yes. Over the last month for sure. I mean, Keith Randolph being injured has been part of that. Seth Coleman certainly had 1 good game, but Dylan Rosiak's done it more consistently. I think, you know, there's guys in the secondary that have been pretty decent. Like I think Xavier Scott has been really good. I think Taz Nicholson, when he doesn't commit penalties, has been really good. So I think those guys have been good, but Dylan Rosiak certainly has been the most impactful playmaker outside of Seth Coleman's 1 game during the last month of the season, outside of Johnny Newton, for sure.
That's a step, because early on in the season, we talked on this podcast a lot about linebacker play, and they were getting attacked by opposing offenses. And I think that's a big credit to Dylan Rosiak, to Kenenna Odeluga, to James Kreutz recently. We know Tariq Barnes has been out, to just settling into their new roles. And they're playing, especially Rosiak is playing really, really well.
All right, number 2, Seth Coleman broke out last game. Who does the Illini defense need to break out next, Joey?
Did you want to stay in the outside linebacker room and go with Gabe Akis? I mean, I think Keith Randolph, but it feels weird saying breakout for him, especially if we don't know his availability. We'll talk to Brett Bielema here in about an hour. I think Gabe Akis, because Gabe Akis was a guy, much like Seth Coleman, who could have taken this defense, especially as the back end was younger or inexperienced, I think is probably the better way to put it, He was a guy that you thought was going to be able to contribute to some heavy pressure up front. We have not seen that bear out this year. So I think you got to stay in the room, right? Unless you got someone else.
No, you're right. And I asked Charlie Bolin about him this week because Brett Bielema had mentioned Gabe has been a little frustrated with his lack of production, as I know some Illinois fans are as well. And he said where he's at right now with his sacks and production, he wants more than what he's had at this point. There's been a little frustration. This is Bolin talking about Akis, but nothing out of the ordinary or nothing more than normal frustration within the course of the season. But just like Seth, the work ethic hasn't changed. The dedication hasn't changed. He's been plugging along, working hard, and continuing to put the time in it. At some point when his opportunities show up and he can take advantage of them, it'll all pay off. I envision it will be a moment or moments like Seth had the other day. So I don't know if Charlie's calling his shot, but I think with Gabe Akis that sometimes, Joey, I think he's been going for the home run play a little bit too much. I feel like he's, selling out on a quarterback or a running back, trying to make that big splash play when just be consistent and your moment will come. And when it's there, just make the play. I think that's what Charlie Bolin is getting to, of what Seth Coleman it kind of did. So yes, they need more production out of him, but it might be just, hey, don't need to go for the splash, but just do your job. And eventually that with Johnny Newton getting double teams and triple teams, it'll come to you. And when those moments come, just take advantage of them like Seth Coleman did. So I don't think he needs to press too much for that sack or for those tackles for loss. I think it's just doing your job and being there for when those moments come, because let's be honest, Seth Coleman twice, the play kind of just came to him. And I think he took advantage of those moments. So I think that's what Gabe Akis needs to do. The other guy I would say, I think he's been really good in run support here recently, but they need some plays. They need some downfield plays out of their free safety, and that would be Miles Scott. I think he's been really solid in his responsibilities, Joey, but they could use a few more big plays. But teams just haven't been testing them all that much down the field. We saw it a few times in man coverage with Tyler Strain making some plays, but if Illinois can just get some funneled plays, some funneled throws in the middle of the field, I think Miles Scott, you need him to take advantage of those.
Yeah, I do want to add one more thing about Gabe Akis, and I think you've seen maybe that do your job come to pass a little bit more with the way the rotation's gone, with more Alec Bryant, with more Ezekiel Holmes, guys who seem are they as splashy or as flashy as a Seth Coleman or a Gabe Akis? No, but it seems like they've been very consistent in their responsibilities. And I think maybe that's, I don't know that to be the case, but maybe that's a challenge to Gabe Akis to be more consistent in the not go knock a quarterback into the second row responsibilities. I think Miles Scott, to further that point, Jeremy, that big pick six against Toledo, and then in terms of the takeaways, a position that is kind of built for takeaways, those have not really shown up since that game. Xavier Scott's had a couple. I thought, again, he's been really, really good. But yeah, this is a game that you need to get a quarterback under pressure, a young quarterback under pressure, and make him make mistakes. And I think is this going to be our pick to click? I don't know. I think Miles Scott would be a guy to benefit from some of those throws and see if he can capitalize on that, like Kirby Joseph did. Like Kendall Smith did a year ago at Madison, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and I think part of this is the quarterbacks are testing the second cornerback for Illinois more often. They're going.
That's got to be a more stable position, to be honest with you, Jeremy. We saw Tyler Strain have some nice moments, but the reality of it was he was benched for a true freshman going into that game. That second corner spot has got to be more consistent because teams are attacking that.
Yeah, so teams are attacking Zach Toby when he's on the field. They're attacking, obviously, Tyson Rooks, and it worked for Maryland. But they attacked Tyler Strain, and Strain played better last week. So that was a huge improvement, but he had not played all that great in the previous week. So I think they're testing more of that second corner. So that's maybe why Miles Scott isn't getting more opportunities in the middle of the field. But I do want to mention with those safeties, the tight ends have not hurt Illinois quite as much this year. So kudos to Nicario Harper, Miles Scott, and some of those linebackers for that. Number 3, how would you grade Luke Altmyer's season so far, Joey?
That's a good question. C+?
That's what I have. I have C+.
I think it's a C+. I think you've seen flash. And can we just really quickly, we talked to Luke Altmyer on Tuesday, hadn't really talked to him for a little bit before that. He knows. Like, this isn't the case of a quarterback going up there like, what are you guys talking about? Look, I'm doing this or that. Like, he knows. He knows where his faults are, and he's protected the football much better since that Penn State meltdown. He's had the fumble, right? He had the strip sack at Purdue. I think his next
was a killer. Like the Purdue game,
brutal.
Those turnovers cost you a victory, like, or a chance at a victory, right? I don't know if they would have won, but a chance at a victory. And then that Purdue, it just flipped the game. When you get a sack fumble, you score points on your first drive, you get a quick 3-and-out, I believe, or you got a quick punt, at least from Purdue. Don't remember if it was 3-and-out, but it wasn't a long drive. And then you have that strip sack, and all of a sudden the Purdue's got the lead, and they never gave it up, or I guess they gave it up once, but just that completely changed the game, and the offense just kind of went into a shell after that. Like those are the plays you can't have. But to your point, Joey, he's done really good things. Like he has ignited the vertical passing attack for Illinois. Illinois is number 3 in the Big Ten in passing yards per game. That's a fun fact. I don't know if people would think that, but they are number 3 right now in passing yards per game in the Big Ten. They're 4th in pass yards per attempt. They're 6th in passing touchdowns, and that number should be higher if Luke Altmyer was a little bit better in the red zone here. Altmyer's 5th in the Big Ten in passing efficiency, number 1 in the Big Ten West, higher than Tanner Mordecai, higher than Hudson Card. So you can make an argument he has been as flashy of a playmaker as any of the transfer quarterbacks that have come into the Big Ten West here. The problem is the turnovers. He's number 1 in interceptions with 9. I would argue 2 of those aren't on him, but the rest of them are. That's a lot of interceptions. And then the ball security with the fumbles. And he's been sacked more times than any Big Ten quarterback. A lot of that is on his offensive line. Not all of it is. Some of it is on Luke Altmyer.
And he'll tell you that.
Yeah, and he'll tell you that. Like sometimes he's trying to escape the pocket too early, and it leads to sacks because a linebacker is spying him. Other times he's just holding onto the ball too long. So those are the things, the growing pains that it's now start 8 of the season for him. He's got to be better in those things. He's got to be good against Wisconsin. And Wisconsin's defense makes me nervous because they disguise their blitzes, but they kind of run, 6 men on the line of scrimmage. Guys will drop back, and it concerns me about the offensive line, but it also concerns me with Luke Altmyer being able to read it, but also just keeping his eyes downfield, not peeking at the rush, and kind of being poised against the pass rush. So those are things that concern me. But there's been highs and lows. It's just about steadying those out, Joey, and just consistently giving Illinois a chance on these drives.
Yeah, a lot of this is what we thought Luke Altmyer was going to give Illinois when he committed and he got here without a lot of experience. But I feel like a broken record. Tommy DeVito had so many snaps and so many passes under his belt when he got here, which is why he was able just to hit the ground and go. Like there was never that moment for Tommy DeVito. It was boom, boom, and then he's leading this in different ways than Luke Altmyer, right? He wasn't throwing downfield like that, but we knew a young quarterback without the snaps, without the reps, without the games was going to have this. I think if you take Penn State out of it, I might go up to a B minus or a B, right? Like Penn State was a really kind of a, oh boy, is this going to take longer than what we thought it was going to take with Luke Altmyer moment. And to his credit, he's rebounded from that, but that was a brutal game because it was kind of right there for Illinois, if not for those turnovers.
But I just think we have to remember Purdue, it wasn't a great performance by him.
It wasn't. And look, also with Penn State, Manny Diaz is a stud, and he made life just a nightmare on that offense.
And then Nebraska wasn't a very good performance.
That's right.
Like when the offense just got into its rut, it kind of reminded me a little bit of the Brandon Peters. Can this guy lift a team out of these struggles? And then he has good moments in some of those games with those downfield throws, but it's just got to be more consistent. Maryland certainly was a big bounce back, not perfect by Luke Altmyer. I thought he missed some singles, but he's just got to be more consistently not burying Illinois with some of the decision making. But some of that is on the offensive line. Some of that is on the play calling. But Luke,
lack of a running game too.
Yeah,
right.
He needs a better
deficits by the defense. There's a lot. This sounds like excuses. Sorry to cut you off, but like there's a lot of nuance in discussing his game because the offensive line's underperformed. The running backs have been hurt by injury, and the line hasn't really helped get them running. The defense helped contribute to early deficits that set into obvious pass rush situations or passing situations that Illinois is not built for. So yes, Luke Altmyer has to be better, but there's a lot of other factors that go into that. But I mean, look, at the end of the day, you're right. Like he's got to make some of those singles. He's got to get the ball out faster. That's obvious, but it is worth at least mentioning some of the other elements there.
Here would be my nut graft for a journalism term, Joey, on Luke Altmyer. He has hurt you at times, but he has shown me plenty that he is my guy for the next 2 seasons after this. Like there's a lot there. that you can work with as long as he improves in those decision-making realms. Like, okay, if we're having the same conversation next year, then it's like, okay, we might need an upgrade here, but he's shown me enough talent, enough poise, enough clutch gene late in these games that I think this guy can be pretty good. It's just, he's going through the growing pains that we kind of predicted. It's just the other things, the offensive line, the running game have not been as good as we thought to kind of make up for those things.
Yeah, I think the growing pains, like if this were 21 and Luke Altmyer was your quarterback and it's Brett Bielema's first year and nothing had been established, you'd say, all right, well. But then I just think the expectations were a little higher, the microscope's a little bit more because you wanted a quarterback to come in and not have those. Like that's the perfect world as a quarterback doesn't have growing pains. But I do think long-term 2024, 2025, he'll still be your quarterback, presumably. Like this season, the flashes he's shown, you want to see him continue to build on that as he continues with Barry Lonnie and some of the wide receivers there.
And I think that's what this last 5 games is all about. Take that next step. Can he take that next step to where we're talking about, hey, last 6 games, it was a BB plus for Luke Altmyer, and he helped lead you to a bowl game.
All right, it almost reminds me, remember Brandon Peters after the Red Box Bowl? Where it's like, this guy, like if you get that same tone, you want the next season to be a little differently, or go a little differently, obviously. But if you get that same tone, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't. Like to have a quarterback go from season to season, like Illinois has not had that a lot in recent memory. Jeremy is starting quarterbacks that like legitimately had belief. I think that's a big thing. We'll see if that ends up at a bowl game press conference or if that ends up at post Northwestern press conference. But I think that's really important.
Yeah, and the Brandon Peters thing was 1, keep him healthy. Number 2, get the weapons and the offensive coordinator around him. Like he did not have those things, but Brandon also caused himself some issues as well. This episode of the Illini Inquirer podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/Illini and get on your way to being your best self. Do you ever feel like your brain is getting in its own way? Like you know what you should do, what's good for you, but you just can't do it. Well, therapy helps you figure out what's holding you back so you can work for yourself instead of working against yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and if you and that therapist don't mesh, you can switch your therapist at any time for no additional charge. So make your brain your friend again and give BetterHelp a try. Visit betterhelp.com/Illini today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Illini. Are you looking for unique and comfortable Illini gear? Well, Homefield is a premium collegiate apparel based in Indianapolis that emphasizes their commitment to creating incredibly comfortable, officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. They feature a growing collection of over 150 colleges to choose from, including, of course, the University of Illinois. So go check out homefieldapparel.com because their designs are super unique because they delve into the archives and history of each school using unique logos and iconic moments to create thoughtfully designed apparel. I'm scrolling at homefieldapparel.com right now with their Illini gear, and they have 1989 Fighting Illini basketball long sleeve. They got the Flying Illini logo, the script Illinois. You can get the pants, the joggers, that 1970s script, or a nice hoodie. They got the 80s Illini football helmet, the 2004-05 Illinois basketball logo on a vintage crew neck, the Ringer retro tee, the orange Ringer tee with Fighting Illini basketball on it. Go check these guys out. Because not only is the design fantastic, but these shirts, guys, are incredibly comfortable. Homefield is all about authenticity and nostalgia. So give their site a look. It's not the typical Illinois gear you see. You can find them at homefieldapparel.com, where you can see their selection of colleges available, of course, including Illinois. And guess what? Our listeners get 15% off their first order with discount code Illini23. Again, 15% off at homefieldapparel.com with discount code Illini23. Whether you're looking for Illinois football gear for this season or Illini basketball gear for the coming season, check out homefieldapparel.com. Number 4, if Reggie Love is cleared to play and healthy, and we'll get an update from Brett Bielema here probably by the time we post this, how would you split up the running back workload after what Caden Fagan and Aiden Lawfrey to a lesser extent showed you at Maryland?
It's like 50-50 just cheating. Is that bad podcasting just to say cheating?
I had 35-15. That's what I had, because I don't know if Reggie Love will be fully healthy, but Caden Fagan, I think, deserves 60% of that load as long as he is as productive as he was last week, and the offensive line was. But I think Reggie Love is really important for this team. I just think he's a really good all-around back. I think he's best in a number 2 role, and that's no shot at him because I think he can make plays, and I think he can help keep Caden Fagan fresh. But I think that's what I was kind of thinking coming into the season was Josh McCray would be that 55-60 guy, the bell cow who kind of carries the ball 200 times, gets you 1,000 yards, wears teams down at the end of games. While Reggie Love is just that do everything kind of well, back that really helps you on third downs, helps you in the passing game, and maybe can be more explosive. And then Aiden Lawfrey kind of gets in the mix. I'd like to see a little bit more, to the, I said 60, 35, 15. That adds up to 100.
I wasn't going to be the one. I'm not very good at math either.
Maybe 55, 35, 10. Math, we're journalism majors, not math majors. But I'd like to see Aiden Lawfrey used in some kind of how he was at the end of the game, getting him out on the edge, some outside zone reads, things like that. I'd like to get him more involved there. But yes, somewhere in there. Caden Fagan gets the bulk, and then Reggie Love gets most of the carries after that, but Aiden Lawfrey can be sprinkled in on some sub packages.
Yeah, I think Caden Fagan's earned it. I've been kind of on that hype train for a little bit. It's the way he cut in particular, like we know he's a big guy. Like that, if you don't know that, I'm sorry to break news to you in this way. But the way that he cut, what I thought for somebody as large as he is was telling. He runs hard. How many times did Barry Lunny use fall forward on Monday? Like even if it's fitted up, even if it's should go for 0 or -1 or 2, he seems to there's value in 2nd and 8. It's not ideal, but there's value in 2nd and 8, 3rd and 6, whatever the case is.
You know what? It's easier to fall forward, Joey, when your offensive line gives you 6 yards before you're touched. Like that's a good thing.
Right. Yeah. That's 100% now. Is Caden Fagan going to be your home run Chase Brown guy? No. Like that much is very clear to us. But I think Reggie Love can come in there and be a changer. Like this isn't, push Reggie Love off to the side, don't need him anymore. That's not the case. And I don't think anyone at Illinois would tell you that. I think he could be a compliment to Caden Fagan. I'm glad you mentioned that. I thought you thought he was going to be the number 2. It's 1B, a more appropriate probably terminology here, to Josh McCray. I think that's where he's suited. So if Josh McCray's not there, I think Caden Fagan and those two could be a good duo together with Aiden Lawfrey being your home run guy.
I think of like Chase Brown last year had to be in almost every play, right? Like, and towards the end of those drives, those 10 to 12 play drives that Illinois needed to score touchdowns last year. I don't think that's the case this year. I think they can be a 6, 8, play drive team with their more explosiveness. But you'd love to start Caden Fagan on drives, get you in some opportunities for easy 3rd down conversions or 2nd down conversions. Reggie Love comes in mid-drive, right? Helps you pass protect a little bit. That's when you can take your shots more likely, is in that, as Jay Lehman likes to call it, the alumni zone, the 30 to 50 is where you like to take those shots. But then Caden Fagan comes at the end of the goal, like when you get in the red zone, right? And Caden Fagan is your red zone guy. Like then you're fresh, you're healthy. Like I think that's the ideal for this team. And then you mix Aiden Lawfrey in there a little bit just to try and get some explosive plays.
Can we get a list next time you talk with Jay of the best Jay Lehmanisms?
Alumni zone is one of my favorites.
He's really good. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm curious still about Reggie Love's health. He did not travel to Maryland, so we have to factor that in. We'll ask Brett Bielema today. I think we'll probably get the most clear answer the closer to kickoff we get. I'm sure Brett Bielema will give an update today, but we'll see how that ultimately looks. Caden Fagan's impressive. He is a very, very impressive young man, and I think Reggie Love could be a really good compliment for a team that needs to run the ball. Like I don't want to belabor this. I feel like I do it on every podcast, but they need to run the ball because they're not equipped to be in obvious passing situations, whether it's their wide receivers or offensive line, the decision-making at times from their quarterback. They need to be able to be in those manageable situations.
I'm doing research on the fly here, Joey, but the last 4 games, Caden Fagan has, as I type on my calculator live on a podcast, 212 yards on 38 carries. That'll do.
That'll do. I'm trying to go back. So you said the last 4 games?
Last 4 games. So FAU 3 for 28, 11 for 85. That was later in the game, so that is some context. Nebraska never could get them going, 5 for 15. Maryland, close game throughout, 19 for 84.
Yeah, so there was a point in time before Maryland that a lot of those stats came in, I don't want to say garbage time, but decided time. That was not the case at Maryland. He went out there and obviously, right, they were kind of forced into that. But I think that's telling because there were times where he, his game was over and he was able to put up some yardage there and show a little bit. But to do it over the course of a game consistently, that was kind of felt like a moment.
I will say FAU, there were some moments. Purdue, end of first half, he had some moments. But yes, it is worth saying that at Maryland, it was in the meaningful moments, really meaningful moments all throughout the game. All right, number 5. What gives you the most confidence about Illinois against Wisconsin?
God, I don't want to say the offensive line. I want to say the way they ran the ball. I just, again, like that is so critical to what they want to do. And the way the offensive line moved people, to your point from earlier, Jeremy, the way Caden Fagan ran and fell forward, the potential, of Reggie Love returning this week. I think you need to run the ball against Wisconsin, and you need to make Luke Altmyer not throw into a really, really good secondary on obvious downs and put your line in a bad spot. And I think that's translatable because this program under Brett Bielema has had those. Now, they also had Chase Brown, which, you don't have that this year. But I think that is a really encouraging sign to be able to find some room on the ground at Maryland on the road against a defense, as we talked about going into it, was probably better than advertised. And they were able to go out there and really balance their offense.
For me, I'm going the other sides of the ball. I mean, the defense and special teams are pretty good. The special teams had a terrible game against Nebraska, cost you. But other than that, Robbie Disher's crew's been pretty good. Caleb Griffin, huge game at Maryland to bounce back after a 4-7 start of field goals. Hugh Robertson, outside of the blocked one against Nebraska, has been really good this year. The return game is as good as we've seen. I mean, Isaiah Williams is having an all Big Ten season as a punt returner this year. And then, kick return, you finally got it going a little bit with Kenari Wilcher. I mean, Maryland slipped a little bit on those, but he took advantage of it and showed his speed. And I just think the defense is going to give you a chance to win. I feel like the rest of the season, Aaron Henry is in his comfort zone. I think he knows what he is. I think he's feeling himself a little bit. He's in his bag a little bit with some things. I think he knows what this defense is, and you're seeing the coaching staff develop these guys. I think we're really starting to see that this coaching staff gets these players better with more experience on the defensive side of the ball. Like Seb McConnell had his best game. Bryce Barnes had his best game last week. So just seeing those guys play a little bit better, I think it's the defensive special teams will probably give you a chance to win. On the flip side, Joey, what gives me the least confidence, I still got to see it another week. I am not bought in. Question 6, what concerns you the most? Can the offense do it 2 weeks in a row? Can they pass protect and run the ball? Can this offensive line put it together for a second straight game? Because I think Luke Altmyer should have the quarterback advantage. And we got to see him grow as well, right? We got to see him put a couple good weeks together. But for me, can the offensive line and Barry Lunny and Luke Altmyer do it again? Can they pass protect and can they run the ball?
I want to build on that really quickly. I want to mention special teams real quick because it was terrible against Nebraska. Say whatever you feel about PFF ratings. I mean, they are very, very hit and miss. Number 1 in terms of special teams grade, Miami, Ohio. 2, Oklahoma State. Tied for 3rd, Washington, Texas, Iowa, Illinois, Buffalo.
That's good company.
PFF grades are not the end-all be-all, right? I think Sidney Brown would probably come on this podcast and tell you as much. But that over the course of a season, like that's pretty good company to be in.
It's had one bad game. Special teams had one bad game.
That's right. To your point, what concerns me the most? Yes, I'm less concerned about their ability to run. I think they went. I think they found something there in terms of what they asked their guys to do in run blocking, in terms of maybe not being as much zone run, zone reads, but pass pro. It's pass pro because, as you mentioned, they're gonna try to confuse this offensive line. I think Zy Chrysler played his best game. Is it as simple as just practicing for a full week? Maybe. I think it's also maybe if you can build a little confidence back in that guy, because I would have to imagine there are times during those first 6 games that it kind of felt like everything was going against him because it was. But can they do enough to keep Luke Altmyer? Can Luke Altmyer do enough to let that pass protection hold up? That's what it comes down to for me. And ultimately, can you stop the run?
Yeah.
Like that's on the defensive side. If you can stop, you're not going to stop Braylon Allen. That's probably not the right wording, even though a year ago in Madison, they did. But Phil Longo is an air raid guy, but he does mix in more run than I think a lot of people want to give in with the air raid offense. But with the redshirt freshman quarterback on the road, is this just going to be a Braylon go make it happen type of game? I think that would be a reasonable thing to think. But if you can stop that and make a young quarterback in his first road start throw, that's huge. But we got to see them consistently stop the run.
Yeah, you got to make Braden Locke beat you. You have to. On the road, he's talented. I mean, he's got good pedigree, but he's a redshirt freshman with 55 snaps of experience, 49 last week against an Iowa defense that is better than Illinois' defense. But you have to make him beat you by containing Braylon Allen. Allen's not going to run for 2 yards on 8 carries like he did last year. That's probably not going to happen again. He's really good. But I was encouraged last week through most of the game, Joey. Roman Hemby got a couple, but Roman Hemby was number one and still is number one in the Big Ten in yards after contact. Now he ended up having 133 yards on 17 touches, got really going in the screen game, had a couple longer runs, but they contained him for the first half or the most of the game through most of the third quarter, then got going a little bit later on in the game, and that helped Maryland's comeback. But that would do. If you can just contain him and force Braden Locke to have to convert on third downs, I think this would set up really, really well for Illinois' defense. But Braylon Allen's good. You have to tackle well. Illinois had some missed tackles, some tackling issues here recently. So the good news, I talked to Andy Boo about this. They are used to tackling some big running backs. Maybe not during the season because you got the scout team, but Jordan Anderson, Caden Fagan, those guys were the 4th and 5th guys. The first team defense was going up against those guys a lot. So they got a little bit of experience going up against them. And of course, last year, the defensive line, the guys who played had experience with Braylon Allen and some of these other guys. But yeah, it's forcing Braylon Allen into 2-3 yard carries and not letting him get those 6, 7, 8 yards. And obviously not letting him get too loose. He can bust them off for like 20 to 40 yards. Not a guy you hope can take you a long time, but force Braden Locke to beat you. That is the key.
That's the key. And someone's wondering, and I am too, and I'll ask Brett Bielema about this here in about an hour. There a Jim Leonard effect? Like it's a different coaching staff, but he knows a lot of this personnel very well. And I'm wondering what his role in particular has been this week in terms of not schemes. Like these coaches are smart enough. Everyone who has film on are smart enough to look and see a scheme, right? But just in personnel in terms of what guys are comfortable with, what they're not comfortable with. I wonder if he's got a bigger impact, not a bigger role, but a bigger impact this week, just given how very, very, very familiar he is with these guys.
Yeah, just like Ryan Walters and those guys had for Purdue against Illinois. Like I think that plays a role. All right, picks to click, Joey. Offense. Last week I took Isaiah Adams. You took Tip Ryman. I think I get the edge there. So who are you going with your offensive pick to click against Wisconsin?
Some real home cooking on your grading there.
Isaiah, I wanted to mention the tackles.
Isaiah Adams was good.
The tackles were really good last week.
I'm going to keep the Pat Bryant train rolling a little bit here. He's got 2 long touchdowns in the last 2 weeks, which I think is really even more telling after just a brutal drop at Purdue. Like that's a drop that can really that could go south, right? If you let that thing fester, and it didn't. And he's had 2 long pass plays. I think Luke Altmyer trusts him in those roles. I don't know what this looks like in terms of me winning, which even if you're counting, I'm not going to win. But I'm going to take Pat Bryant.
Isaiah Adams over Tip Ryman? That's some kind of.
I'm kidding.
I mean, Tip Ryman did have a pretty good game, actually, as a blocker. So I'll give you a close one there, but I thought Isaiah Adams was a little bit better. I want to do the Casey Washington touchdown. The fact that Barry Lunny mentioned it today or last on Monday makes me think maybe Casey Washington touchdown happens. I'm going narrative, Joey. Struggled start of the season. Everyone wanted to bench him. All the fan base wanted to bench him. Zy Chrysler. I'm going Zy Chrysler with his best game. He was healthy last week. He was better. And I think Wisconsin's not that big up front. They're just athletic and they can move. So if Illinois can get the run game going, I think it's in part because Zy Chrysler is really effective on that right side with Isaiah Adams. They're big. I mean, if Hunter Whitenack goes out there again, or even if it's Josh Geske at left guard, Illinois' offensive line is looking huge with those guys. So I do think Illinois can overpower Wisconsin a little bit in the run game as long as they pick up these blitzes and are sound in their fundamentals. So I'll go with Zy Chrysler.
I'm going to ask Brett Bielema this. I don't ask you before I get to the stadium today. What do you do if Josh Gesky, I don't mean to sound like he's been benched, but Hunter Whiteneck has played pretty well over the last 2 weeks most times. What do you do if Josh Gesky is back and available to go? How do you rotate them? I do feel like that's more of a rotation than Gesky's probably been involved in this season.
If it's 75% Josh Gesky, you're probably starting Hunter Whiteneck. If it's 85% Josh Gesky, then it becomes probably a rotation. If Gesky's 100%, I think Gesky's playing. But I think it's a question whether he's 100%. So we'll see. All right, defensive pick to click, Joey. I'll let you go first. Last week I had Odaluga.
Go.
Last week I had Odaluga and you had Xavier Scott. I think Odaluga with the forced fumble gets that. I'll go first if you want. Young quarterback, inexperienced quarterback. I'm not going the free safety, so you could take it. Taz Nicholson's been really good. A lot of veteran quarterbacks have not tested him. I think a young quarterback might try to test him unwisely, and Taz gets a pick. I think it'd be his first of the year, right? I don't think he's had one yet, but he's been really good in coverage when he doesn't commit penalties. So I'm going to go with Taz Nicholson, who's had a pretty good year when he's not committing penalties.
Well, I don't know that I want to go with the free safety spot, to be honest with you. I'm going to go with Nicario Harper. I think in run support, this is a guy who could come down and really fill up the tackle sheet, as we've seen him do this year. He's been a little more consistent recently, Jeremy. I'm going to go with Harper because we can't take Johnny Newton, and we're kind of getting to the point that it feels like one of us taking Rosiak.
I know.
Every week, even though I did think of the Wisconsin punch narrative with two guys from the same high school and two guys who know each other well, and Dylan Rosiak and Jake Hansen, just a really good Wisconsin back. How about let's go Harper, even though I almost just talked myself out of it.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago I picked Dylan Rosiak. I thought it was kind of bold. Now I try to stick away from those. I try to make some bold picks with a pick to click. Yeah, hard to stay away from those. We're not going with the layups anymore. None of us picked Fagan. None of us. Pat Bryant's a little bit better, but even that one is a little bit more bold than what we've been doing. So hey, I like it. I like it. Anything else, Joey, before we get out of here?
Reggie Love would have been a bold one too if I knew what his health was. But no, I don't. This has suddenly turned into the narrative. Just quickly to recap the big picture of this game, the narrative of this season feels like it's changing. At least the tone around this Illinois football team. Getting into the bye week, a late bye week, by the way. I mean, 8 games in is a late bye week. Mm-hmm. Getting into the bye week at 4-4 after what those first 6 games were feels like a huge win for this program if they're able to pull that off, and it pretty much assures you of a bowl game.
Yep.
It's just big, man. This turned into a really big game when 2 weeks ago I thought they might legitimately be 2-6 going into the bye week.
And just for a historical perspective here, Joey, Illinois has not beaten Wisconsin in back-to-back years since 2002. So it has been a while. They have not beaten Wisconsin 3 out of 5 times since 1992. Okay, they had won a bunch straight when Wisconsin was really bad. There was a time, kids, when Wisconsin football was not very, very good. But I think that would be huge. And yes, you win this going into an off week, Joey, where you can get healthy and go recruit and maybe get some momentum that way. But then you got Minnesota on the road, Indiana at home, Iowa on the road, Northwestern at home. Like those are opportunities for Illinois football to get to a bowl game.
You win this, and you got to go 2-2 against some of the worst teams in the Big Ten.
Right. All of a sudden, you'd start feeling like, man, 7 wins attainable? Is 8 wins attainable?
Easy
Big Ten West?
Oh no. Iowa is not included in some of the worst teams in the Big Ten conversation. Just to make sure we're very clear on that. But
Iowa's very good. Iowa's probably going to trounce to a Big Ten West title here. They got Minnesota, Northwestern, Rutgers, Illinois, Nebraska, and 4 of those are at home. According to ESPN, that doesn't seem right. But man, they got a nice Big Ten West.
If we're gonna play this just to have a little fun as we talk about Iowa, because I ran through a lot of this on the way back from DC when I was crowded in the seat because some guy next to me took up my space. Are Rutgers and Illinois the most losable games on Iowa's remaining schedule?
I mean, Minnesota's offense is not very good. So, I mean, Minnesota and Minnesota, Rutgers, Illinois. I don't see Northwestern scoring on Iowa. I do not see Nebraska scoring. I mean, Nebraska might score 3 points in that game. But anybody, that defense is so good. The quarterback play is so bad that they're playing up against. Like, I could see literally Iowa. They got 5 games left. Do they give up more than 50 points the rest of the year?
Oh, that's a great question. It's a really good question.
Bad offenses, not very good teams, and man, Phil Parker's so good at what he does.
Now, I will say really quickly, you mentioned Nebraska, and just the way you talk about them has not changed for 3 years, Jeremy. That has a lot of Rutgers 21 potential as you look back after Thanksgiving, and like that's the game that really screwed Illinois. Like that's got that potential to linger and to fester if Illinois. We'll see what happens these next 5, but that could be the one that you circled. This is a 5-7 team that's got a lot of Rutgers 21 potential of it.
Yeah, I mean, Purdue, the way it happened, the way it got out of hand was ridiculous, but I still think Nebraska was a far worse loss. Far worse. That's a bad Nebraska team. Purdue's not good. They're 2-5. They're the only Big Ten win they have, but I think Purdue's more talented. I think they're just further along in what they're doing, but man, Nebraska is just not a very good football team. And to lose to them like you did, not even have a chance in that game was ridiculous. So now, speaking of that Rutgers game, 2 years you beat Penn State on the road, you come home and you lose to Rutgers, a bad Rutgers team. Wisconsin's better than that, but can you follow it up? Can you string it together and give yourself a chance at a road game? Because there's so many games in 2021 you look back on and say, man, if they just held on and beat Purdue, man, if they just held on and beat Maryland, but man, if they just would have came home and beat Rutgers at home after beating Penn State, you would have been in a bowl game. And, Brett Bielema era feels even more different, like even better than what you've done so far. And it feel more like what Jeff Brom did his first couple years at Purdue. So that's why it's important. Can you sustain week to week? And that's what this game's all about. It's what the season's all about.
Yeah. I'm fascinated. This game, the tone of this game has changed so much for me in 2 weeks.
Happy homecoming, everybody, for Joey Wagner. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate the insight. I'll see you on Saturday.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
I'm very excited to announce our new partnership with Underdog Fantasy. We decided to partner with Underdog because it's the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Underdog Fantasy has a lot to offer, including their Pick'em game. In Pick'em, you pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game for a chance to win big. It's so easy to play. Just pick 2 to 5 stats of your favorite players and choose whether they'll go higher or lower. You can 20 times your money by going 5 for 5. They also have a Best Ball Mania. If you think you know football, you got to check this one out. This year's Best Ball Mania has $15 million in total prizes up for grabs, with the winner taking home $3 million. So sign up today with promo code Illini and get your first deposit doubled up to $500. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. And don't forget to register with my promo code Illini to get your first deposit doubled up to $500. That's a new deal. It was previously $100. Now it's $500. Must be 18 or older and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit www.ncpgambling.org.